Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining me tonight, Charlie Wyett from The Sun and the Mirror's John Cross. A very warm welcome to both of you. Let's quickly run through the back pages. We'll start with the Mirror as well, get John's thoughts on this shortly. Getting backed in the morning, story about Erik Ten Hag, which has come up a lot in these papers in the morning. Also, Draper in a hurry to be like Murray. Let's move on to the Telegraph, who run the same two stories. United Chiefs back Ten Hag. We'll hear those words shortly. And they've gone with crackerjack after Draper makes it through to the US Open quarter-finals. Let's move on to the Sun. Erik's our man. It's emphatic from Omar Barada and Dan Ashworth as they back Ten Hag as boss. Onto the Mail. Similar theme. We back Erik. They've also got a nice picture there of dazzling Draper as he makes it into the last eight. Well, the Star have gone for a bit of a different angle on it. Time to find that wand, Erik, in reference to his own words, saying he's not Harry Potter. Guardian gone more simply with we're fully backing him, as well as dazzling Draper racing into the quarters, and a story about Arsenal rejecting a late Saudi approach for Leandro Trossard. And finally, the Express. So we've got a good picture lead on Cracker Jack. We'll be covering Jack Draper at some point during the programme. They've also got the story on Erik Ten Hag there. Reds will give Erik more time, and that is where we'll begin. Because, gents, it's quite clear to see what the lead story is for most of those papers in Erik Ten Hag. We started with the Mirror, John, so I'll come to you first. Getting backed in the morning, and it was a pretty emphatic backing for Erik Ten Hag.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Dan Ashworth and Omar Barada making it very, very clear to United members of the United hierarchy, saying that Ten Hag's our man. He's our man for the long term. We made this decision in the summer to stick with him. Yes, it was obviously a painful review, wasn't it? Which seemed to take quite a long time, but they were insistent, weren't they? They hadn't made up their mind before the end of last season. Ten Hag, I think, surprised quite a few of us really by winning the FA Cup. And listen, I actually think it was very admirable. I think what United did. They won 2 trophies in 2 seasons under Ten Hag. But listen, I was at Old Trafford yesterday, and United were really poor. Ten Hag was tetchy in the press conference afterwards. Didn't like his sort of kind of coaching and sort of kind of methods being questioned in any way. But I do think you have every right to question that. It wasn't just about the sort of kind of individual performances; it was about the team attitude and about sort of kind of losing possession in midfield. But I think one thing is absolutely crystal clear is that United have made their choice. They believe in Ten Hag. They think he's the man to go forward, and they've got to give him that time and that support and that backing for the long term, not just the short term. It would be crazy to change that mindset now. Us in the media are always knocking clubs for being too knee-jerk, and I do think Ten Hag, bearing in mind his record of winning trophies, the emphasis is clear. He's got to get United back into the Champions League places. United expect nothing less than that. They expect to be dining at the European football's top table. And I do think even though that backing has come, I'm sure that this season will be judged on whether he gets back into the Champions League or not.
Charlie, this is a story which was on every single back page, including the Telegraph that we can see now. United Chiefs back Ten Hag. It does feel a little sense of déjà vu towards the end of last season, even after the FA Cup success. Has much changed over the summer?
Well, they've brought in five players for nearly £200 million. So I think that shows you that the club, as John said, are backing the manager. I think they had to. I don't think there was much appetite from the supporters to get rid of Ten Hag, or there was none really. So I think the club really had to back the manager, and that's what they've done. But in terms of the overall play, I wasn't at the game yesterday, but I was at Brighton for the Manchester United, the 3-2 defeat. And it still looks as though they're going around in circles, the team. There's still doesn't seem to be sort of a clear identity. That's something that has been often thrown at this current team. Maybe these new signings will make a difference. I'm not sure they will. I still think it's going to end in tears with Ten Hag, but not yet. And he might be the bookies' favourite to get the sack. I don't think that will be right. I think one or two will go in front of him. And I really hope it does work out for him and United, but I'm just not sure. There's still so many fundamental issues with that team, and I think Dan Ashworth certainly knows that. And by the way, it's great that they both came out and spoke to the media. I think in the past, both officials at Man United and other clubs in the Premier League sort of hide away, don't they? So I think they should be praised for speaking to the media. So that's one good thing. But no, there's still a hell of a lot of work to do at Old Trafford, and maybe after the international break, their help with games, Premier League games away at Southampton, I think is home to Palace. But if they don't win those two, there's going to be even more pressure. But I think they'll stumble through for a while.
OK, well, let's take another look at the Telegraph, because Jamie Carragher has been quoted in there as well, saying that it's only a matter of time for Erik Ten Hag. John, do you agree with that necessarily, or do you, like Charlie was mentioning, it's Southampton next away, Crystal Palace away after that? Are these the big games that he's going to have to win in order to get momentum?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the key word, Jasper, honestly, momentum. He's got to build up a winning spirit and a winning rhythm, really, with this team. And look, there are a lot of new faces there. Look, I like some of their business over the summer. I do think obviously he's finished the window with the last deal was Manuel Ugarte, wasn't it, really? And it's obvious he's brought him in to replace Casemiro, who's frankly terrible against Liverpool. And it's just, been a wonderful player, brilliant career, but it should have finished in the summer. It really should have. They should have shipped him out, because honestly, he's just not capable, I don't think, of playing at Premier League level and pace anymore. And so I do think Ten Hag, I think his first reaction will be, judge me on when my new look team takes place. It looked like a new look defence to me, yesterday, and it will take some building and some blending in. Xerxes, I think, is obviously a new arrival. I didn't think he had the greatest game yesterday, but again, he's sort of almost that mid-range signing. It might take a little bit of while for him to adjust to the Premier League. Give him a bit of a time and sort of see whether it is. I think Jamie Carragher was making the point, and I think he does so again in the Telegraph, that it all seems so familiar. And basically, it's about breaking that pattern and about breaking sort of kind of through, and sort of United really sort of throwing off those shackles. And he's doubting really whether Ten Hag, can change that sort of kind of negativity from last season. To see fans sort of kind of barrack a bit of Rashford and sort of turn on the fans a bit, and sort of the fans turn a little bit on substitutions, for example. It wasn't a happy place. And I think sometimes when you lose the fans and really, Ten Hag just cannot afford to let the Old Trafford faithful go, because Charlie's right. The fans were actually really sort of kind of quite vociferous in their support. They love the fact that he won the trophies, but he's now got to deliver and he's got to prove himself, I think, again, Ten Hag.
Yeah. Charlie, 2 trophies in 2 seasons for Ten Hag, but this is his third season that he's beginning with Manchester United, and he's come up against a new boss for Liverpool in Arne Slot. And I think maybe the comparison or the accusation against Ten Hag is that, well, look at Slot's identity that he's put on this Liverpool team already, and maybe at Old Trafford there isn't that sense. From what you saw, particularly in that Brighton game, if you weren't able to see the Liverpool game live, did you get a sense of that lack of identity?
Yeah, 100%, and that's a huge problem. And if there was an identity, and we knew where they were going, even if the results were inconsistent, it might not be as bad. But it's not just Liverpool, is it? Compare Manchester United to Manchester City; they're way off. Compare Manchester United to Arsenal; absolutely way off. And I know United will be looking to finish in the Champions League this season and top 4 or maybe top 5. But at the moment, they look miles off. I know they were 8th last year and they might improve on that. But Manchester United, they're nowhere near those top 3 teams. And that's not going to happen this season. And I'm not sure Ten Hag's the manager to do it. I'm really not.
John, let's stay with United, but go with another story that was on the back page of the Mirror. And you can see just at the top there, Sancho not pushed out. This after his loan move to Chelsea. All in all, it hasn't been a happy time for Jadon Sancho at Old Trafford, has it?
No, and listen, he's systematic, really, and he's sort of almost that sort of indicator, isn't he, that basically what's wrong with United's transfer business, signed for a lot of money, 70 million odd, wasn't it? And basically, it just hasn't worked out. He is an incredibly exciting player. I love watching Sancho. He's got a trick, he's sort of kind of explosive. He's got so much potential, but he just hasn't delivered within that time. The fallout was clear with Ten Hag. And really, I actually think that they kissed and made up sort of kind of quite publicly, didn't they? Just so that they could, frankly, sort of kind of keep his value in the market. I think the intention was always to offload him. I know Dan Ashworth making it clear there, Sancho wasn't forced out. It was kind of a decision, but Chelsea wanted him. Chelsea have got some sort of kind of, I think sort of Joe Shields, used to work with some of the players that Chelsea have recruited, including Sancho. And basically that recruitment has been quite shrewd and has been quite sharp, but I think they're taking a chance on Sancho. But I like the thing is about Sancho, he's got so much to prove that I actually think that it could actually end up being something that reignites him actually at Chelsea and gives him another start. But I tell you what, Sancho's failure at Old Trafford is rather indicative of some of the sort of the signings and their failures in the last few seasons. And that's something that this season they've got to show that is on the road to recovery. They've got the new recruitment, new people in place to make those transfers, and they've got to start getting them right.
Yeah, OK, we wait to see how Sancho gets on at Chelsea. Certainly plenty of competition there in those wide spots. Let's take a quick break there. When we come back, we'll look at more of the back pages, and we'll have a look at this story as well that John's written in tomorrow's Mirror. Time for Post to deliver a transfer analysis that we're going to delve into next. You're watching Back Pages tonight, and warm welcome back to Charlie Wyett from The Sun and The Mirror's John Cross. Let's go to The Sun as well for our next story. We're going to talk Leandro Trossard. That's after Arsenal rejected a late bid from Saudi side Al Ittihad for the winger. And Charlie, no real surprise that the bid was rejected. He's pretty popular at the Emirates, isn't he?
Yeah, it'd have been a terrible decision. So it was obviously the right call by Mikel Arteta. I think it was a £4 million sort of loan fee with a view to a £25 million transfer. But the reason Arsenal have got a chance at the title, and I really believe that, is that they've got a good squad, a well-balanced squad. And, Trossard, isn't playing as many games he'd like, but he's a key player. I was at Mikel Arteta's press conference on Friday. We was asked about Trossard, basically because it was ahead of playing Brighton, and spoke about him with real warmth. So that it's not a surprise, but obviously there's some movement regarding Saudi Arabia, and actually Al Ittihad that tried to sign him. They've signed Steven Bergwijn tonight, so they've got a sort of attacking midfielder. Chris Smalling's gone to Saudi today as well. So I think the transfer window is for another few weeks yet. So I'm sure we'll see a few more players head over there.
Yeah, John, does you think there need to be a sort of a global day where a transfer window closes to avoid this for Premier League clubs or for any other club in any country? Does it have to be uniform, do you think?
Yeah, I think ideally, I think it would be very difficult to impose that outside of Europe. I think that UEFA, would be well within their rights to kind of say there should be a uniform day across Europe. But imagine trying to sort of kind of tell Saudi Pro League, sort of kind of outside of that jurisdiction, if you like, to do that. Ideally, that would be the case. Generally in the past few seasons, we've had this kind of lingering fear, haven't we, that the sort of Premier League window shuts, so Premier League clubs can't do it anymore, but they could still lose players to big Saudi deals. And that's something that really has, annoyed and upset and frustrated clubs and indeed managers. So ideally, I would say yes. But I just a while ago, we did get into kind of having it shut before the start of the season, and then also trying to have this uniform day. I just think it's very uncomfortable. I mean, you even have sort of kind of time differences, don't you? So I do think it's something that should be looked at again. Can I see it happening anytime soon? Not really, because I don't think football moves in harmonious ways, to be honest. So it's a bit frustrating, I think.
Yeah, OK, John, let's stick with transfers. Let's stick with you as well, because although not technically on the back page, we're going to bend the rules slightly for back pages tonight, because this is what you've written in the morning's Mirror. Just explain to us this article.
Yeah, listen, I wanted to kind of just have a look at generally the transfer window overall, because it finished obviously Friday night, and kind of, there's obviously stories coming out, sort of kind of finished on sort of kind of with Sterling and sort of, Sancho moving and other things. And I just thought actually it would be quite, interesting to just delve a little bit about who spent what. And actually what really, was sort of kind of, I was alerted to, was just how much Spurs have spent, not just in this window, Solanke being their big one this time, but in the last, few seasons. Listen, Daniel Levy, the chairman, sometimes takes a bit of stick really for not showing enough ambition to win trophies and get back and sort of in the title race. But actually, when you break it down, Spurs spending really puts it up there. I think it's £532 million in the last 4 seasons. Of course, that is offset with sales, but in net spend, they're only behind Chelsea, Man United and Arsenal. And really, that, I think, sort of, puts a different perspective on it. Definitely puts a little bit of pressure on Ange Postecoglou. I'm sure everyone will agree really kind of was a bit of a breath of fresh air at Spurs last season. They tailed away in the end and missed out on the Champions League place. But what I would say is, having spent again, big time this summer, I would think it's a fair assumption to say that he's probably under pressure to getting back in the Champions League places next season. But what I found really interesting was that, you can't knock Tottenham's ambition and Daniel Levy for really going for it, for trying to get Spurs, back up there and with a team to match the stadium. But you quickly forget the kind of Solankes, Maddison, Romero. It's Brennan Johnson was a lot of money. So they have spent a lot of money in that squad, within that team, and it's now, I think, time for them to kind of push on and ensure that they finish in the top 4, possibly 5th.
Is that success for them, Charlie? Do you think this season a top 4 spot, is that enough to be deemed success for Ange Postecoglou?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think it'll be really successful for Tottenham if they get in the top 4. It's going to be a tough ask, and I hope they can do that. I think there is a bit of unrest behind the scenes, certainly amongst the fans. I think some of them are frustrated with Postecoglou and obviously some of the results, but I hope it works out for them. And yeah, 4th place. But I think it's a really unpredictable one this season, that who's going to get 4th and 5th, because there's 3 very obvious 3 teams that are much better than everybody else. And then sort of, for the European places, you could say pretty much, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 teams we all probably got a chance of getting there. So yeah, it's going to be really tight this year, and I think at times unpredictable. And if Tottenham could, get in the top 4 or 5, that'd be a huge success for them. I think. Obviously, ultimately, they want a trophy, don't they? That's what Tottenham fans really call for. But equally, 4th or 5th place would be good for them. Certainly, Daniel Levy would be happy with the Champions League money.
Yeah, absolutely. John, just wonder, when you were writing this article and doing your research on the transfer window, did any particular club stick out for you maybe this summer, in terms of you might have thought that they'd, let's quote unquote, won the transfer window this time round?
Oh, Man City. It's astonishing. Man City signed Savinho, don't they? But they've sold Alvarez, and then also signed Ilkay Gundogan. One of the best players in recent times in Premier League history. That kind of a couple of years ago was winning sort of trebles and dominating games in the Premier League, and they signed him on a free transfer. So it ended up in profit. And without a shadow of a doubt, in my mind, sort of, strengthened considerably. Listen, Arsenal, I think, have sort of, sold quite well and bought quite shrewdly. So they're kind of, net spend, he's quite decent this summer, I think. Obviously, United have spent big. And look at Chelsea. When you break it down, there's been so many ins and outs, and it does explain for a lot of that 1.9 billion. The other point about the analysis was that, the Premier League have spent nearly twice as much as the next big European league, which is, in Italy, Serie A. And so basically, the Premier League, there's no doubt about it. There's still the big spenders. I know the Premier League point towards, a lot of signings from the EFL. So the money goes around and kind of, keeps the sort of kind of, football financials going. We do actually have a sort of a sidebar in there with sort of kind of very leading agent, Sky Andrew, talking about how, money shouldn't be lost from the game, and there should be a responsibility from agents to kind of do the right thing and not sort of kind of run rings around FIFA. So I do think there's a feeling within the game that basically that actually it should be balanced out and be sensible. But it will be interesting to see whether, having spent all this money, that the Premier League can still agree a deal with the EFL, which I'm sure will be on sort of kind of on the agenda quite soon in the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, gents, we've got under 2 minutes until the end of the programme, but I want to touch on Cracker Jack Draper there at Charlie, after he made it through to his first Grand Slam quarter-final. Do you think British men's tennis have got their next superstar?
Yeah, I do, and they needed that. They needed one, don't they? The year that Andy Murray left. I think Jack, massive win for him today. Straight sets, really impressive. Lost it in the fourth round last year. Definitely a top 10 player, maybe top 5 player. Obviously, then it's fine margins. But look, he's maybe fortunate that we're in an era where there's not a so-called, there's not going to be a dominant force like there was a few years ago with Nadal and Federer and obviously Djokovic. So I think he's lucky. Andy Murray's sort of been advising him for the last couple of years. So he's been lucky to still have that advice. So let's hope he can get into the semi-finals. He's going to play an Aussie. We don't know which one, but he's going to be playing Australia. He's got a great chance at the semi-finals.
Yeah, very, very briefly, John, got about 30 seconds. Do you think he's the heir apparent to Andy Murray?
Well, it's opening up, isn't it, really? Because Djokovic and, Alcaraz, so there's an opportunity. I'd love to see it. We need a new British hero, so I'd love to see it. Andy Murray is great for the sport. Let's hope Jack can do the same.
OK. John, Charlie, thank you so much for your company this evening on Back Pages tonight.